Board members, staff, guests, and members of the public are reminded that the full authority board meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the authority's website along with the official written minutes. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, and the general public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the full authority and/or the KCCA board of directors. The recorded video of the full authority meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the full authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full authority. With that, any declarations of pecuniary interest tonight from members? Seeing none, we'll move to our minutes from our April 19th minute. Those were in your advance package. We have a mover and seconder, moved by Linda, seconded by Max. Questions or comments on the minutes from anyone? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Opposed if any, and that's carried. Next up, we've got our watershed conditions report that Jennifer sent out to us in advance. We've had a bit of rain the last little while. We've got some pictures up there as well. So we've got information report here. Questions or comments from anyone on the information report?
Just a quick one. I'm looking at the one picture on page 13, the wing wall in the dam. It's looking, and I don't know if that is looking tired or whether that's just kind of stuff growing on the wall, or it looks like it's pitted and started to get tired there.
Madam Chair, you're just referring to like the white streaks on the wall there.
Yeah. The
So
pitting
there's some grouting that happens every year, and the staff look at it on an annual basis, and there is plans to do a little bit of grouting work on that wall this summer.
Anything else on that one? Linda?
Just on the damage, and I noticed that she did highlight none reported at this minute, so I'm going to assume with the water levels now crested, we're starting to go back down. How are we doing? Any damage that's been visible along the banks or any of the walkways? I noticed that a couple of the parks were flooded, so.
Madam Chair, we haven't had any reports of damage from citizens. They were referred to in the package how we had several calls during the 2009 event of basements flooding, and that's more a city responsibility anyways, but there was an event a couple of years ago in September where similarly we got a lot of calls from landowners that had slumping in their backyards, especially if they were backing on a ravine. We didn't get any calls of that nature this year, or during this event. I had Jen just do a little bit more detailed report this time. It is kind of curious to see the comparisons of different events, and certainly the event from 2017 to 2009 got more rain in 2017 during this latest event. But we didn't have the snow melt or the ice jamming down the port, and that makes a significant difference. But what I found fascinating was the pictures of the South Pole wall. You realize just the volume of water that makes its way through our system in a pretty rapidly through the system, and that the strength of that rising water as it goes through. The only other thing, Madam Chair, I'd mention is, of course, the high water event got a lot of coverage across the province, and there certainly was some CBC coverage on the event, and different folks calling in and saying, well, the government should be doing more, we should not be building in our floodplain, what can we do to prevent these things? And Conservation Ontario came out with some, I think, good media releases and just some reminders that conservation authorities are on the landscape, and things could have been much worse if we didn't have the conservation authorities in place, and keeping people out of building in the floodplain, and just the amount of monitoring that we do when these systems come through.
So just to relay back to Jennifer, I thought she did some great interviews, and it was nice to see her face out there, that we were represented. At all the conservation areas, I've seen her face maybe 3 or 4 times doing interviews or doing something. So tell her thank you. I mean, she did a really good job.
Good.
So.
Okay. Any further questions on that? We get a motion to receive that for information. Bill and Steve, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're up to our project tracking report. Lots going on this time of year.
Madam Chair, if I could just highlight a couple of things. I understand bragging rights are in order for the board members.
That's right. I
I
forgot my yellow
the
jacket.
staff team at Spellbound.
We just don't know how to spell plant names, apparently.
Oh,
That was the worst round ever. We did so well on the other 2 rounds.
our goal was to beat Scott.
And we did that.
So the event raised $9,000 for the Trust and Local Environmental Work, so we were pleased with that. Very busy time of year, and I don't think the project tracking really captures that, but we were busy with the high water event. The wet conditions certainly marred a little bit the opening day in the campgrounds, but I think overall the campers were understanding and gauged their bringing in of their equipment based on the actual ground conditions in the campgrounds. We've completely rolled out now the active reservation system in the parks, which has taken a lot of extra work on behalf of staff to do so. The Water Festival is up and running this week, so all hands on deck, basically to keep a skeleton staff in the office and staff that event. And hopefully the thunderstorms stay off for tomorrow, so we don't have to cancel. Tree planting is up and going. I think that was highlighted in the project tracking. Some lots of good roadside plantings happening. You see some trees popping up on Dalewood Drive. That was Kettle staff out doing that, and some MTO plantings as well. That's one benefit of all the rain, is the ground conditions have been excellent for putting those trees in. And Cliff is planning his first drone flights shortly. We finally got our okay from Transport Canada to get the drone up in the air, so he's pretty excited to have his maiden flights.
That's great. Any questions on the project tracking from members?
He's excited because he's going to be working, not because he gets to
That's
play
right.
with the drone, right?
Can we get a motion to accept that as information, Linda and Ian? All in favor? And that is carried. We're up to correspondence. A few pieces there that were in our advanced packages. Anything to add? Any additional pieces? It's an interesting one about all they're doing is really changing the name on the Miami Lands Commission.
Yes.
Like they're not really changing anything else, they're just changing it to a tribunal. It was an interesting one. Questions, comments on any of the correspondence from members? Seeing none. Do you want a motion for that? Sure. Can we get a motion to receive? Ralph and Max, all in favor? That's carried. April 2017 Statement of Revenues and Expenditures. Everything seems to be good. I didn't make any notes, so I don't know if there's questions from members about any of the accounts in there. Linda?
Just the usual, anything that you need to highlight for us, manager?
Madam Chair, to Linda, there's no anomalies.
That's good news. All right. There's no debate, no questions. Can we get a motion to approve? Bill and Marcel, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. New business. First item there is Canada-Ontario Draft Action Plan for Lake Erie.
Madam Chair, I don't have much to add further to the advanced package. The draft action plan was released for comment. Betsy and I did attend a meeting in which the agencies that are undertaking this plan were looking to generate some ideas for the final action plan and looking for support from the CAs to partner on implementation of the final action plan. A lot of the programs and services KCC is already undertaking and a number of new items that have come to the table over the last couple of years are certainly in place to look at the reduction of phosphorus in Lake Erie. And so I think certainly I'm comfortable in moving ahead with commitments that we would continue to partner with Canada, Ontario in terms of enacting further actions to reduce Lake Erie. I think it benefits each one of our municipalities. And so basically, the motion is just to reiterate that commitment. Staff are currently working on a piece of correspondence that would be submitted to the EBR posting that would outline the existing programs and services that we are undertaking, and offering up some ideas and how those could be enhanced with the proper funding from the government.
I know one of the things we've discussed recently at St. Thomas Council is around the Lake Margaret and the phosphorus that's going into there. And I know we had that program at one time. We did some kind of education for people. So certainly anything else we can do on that end, the city is certainly open to being included in whatever we can on helping the health of Lake Erie for sure. And that's where our drinking water comes from. Linda?
Back through the chair to manager, the input for public comment, I see it's been extended to May 24th, and full documents available. Do we also have a full document on our own website, and how are we letting the public know for any input that they wish to give us or this document?
Madam Chair, this isn't a comment that is being enacted by the authority. It's comment generated from the province in Canada. There's that Let's Talk Lake Erie. All the information, I think that link was in the report. All the information is contained on that website, as well as if you go to the EBR website and enter the number there that's in the report as well. You're taken to both the full report and any questions that the government is looking for feedback on. So if the public is interested in commenting on that, I would suggest that they go to those resources to make comment.
Thank you, and I just wanted to make sure we had that highlighted. I almost read it as let's stock a carry, but anyway. Just depends on how you read it.
Marcel?
To you, Madam Chair. I'm of two sides on this document because of the number one business in Elgin County and in Middlesex County is agriculture. And agriculture is getting the bad rap on this one. And to the point where some of my colleagues on municipal councils are telling me that there's talk of, in the near future, banning the broadcasting of fertilizers on farm fields as a result of this phosphorus issue. And so I caution our recommendation of just supporting something we really don't fully know until we do know more, because I don't think our residents who are part of Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, who are farmers, who are part of the farming community, would be that appreciative of us supporting something that's really going to diminish their ability, when I think there's a lot more at play than just targeting farmers. And so, although I support the idea of investigating phosphorus in Lake Erie, I'm a little bit reluctant to do this because I know the target is farming. And so I don't know how to move forward with this because we're blindly approving this.
Madam Chair, if I could try to respond. I definitely hear your comments, Marcel. I think MAFRA is involved in the draft action plan, and I think that should give you some comfort level that agency is there. I think that the plan does recognize for sure that non-point source is a predominant factor in phosphorus moving into the lake, but that's not to say that I don't think the plan talks about actions that can be undertaken in the urban environment as well. So there's things written into the plan like focusing in on low impact development infrastructure, wetland creation, development of green infrastructure that mitigates stormwater, F1 and all those things. So I don't think that I hear that, but I think that there's a lot of good things that will come out of the action plan that will focus on other sources of phosphorus than just hammering on the agricultural base again. I've tried to draft my recommendation in terms of a recommendation in the report so that you're committing to work with the government and offering up, I guess, our services in terms of looking at being a partner as this action plan is put in place, but it's non-committal in the point that the board hasn't given final blessing on what KCCA would be involved in. Because I do realize that, we don't want to just blank and yes, we're gung-ho on this, but at the same point, some of the funding that's come out of the call for phosphorus reduction has been a great benefit to this authority, and I would say an awesome benefit to the farming community and the watershed as well. So Betsy's stewardship program, in terms of finding funding dollars for those on-the-ground type of projects that are mutually beneficial to the farmer to increase crops production, but also look at phosphorus reduction. We wouldn't have that money if we hadn't become involved in programs like Glassy and the COA agreements and all the funding that we're getting for Cliff's work in terms of going out there and mapping gully erosion and things of that nature. That's a result of at least coming to the table and trying to be a partner.
I appreciate that, it's very helpful.
Ian?
First of all, I'd like to say I agree with you, Marcel. And this current provincial government has shown us time after time that they have a thing about agriculture that is very often not beneficial to us, and of those of us that are representing agricultural communities. Secondly, at the bottom of page 54, there's a paragraph there that says many of the CAs in attendance expressed reluctance to make commitments to actions without confirmation of funding. Would you like to comment on that?
Mr. Chair, so we went, or Madam Chair, to Ian, we went to the meeting and they very much were looking for ideas. What else can we do? And there was a lot of discussion, just as Marcel has pointed out. BCAs aren't willing to take on any more programs and services without appropriate funding to match it. And so we made, I think, all of the CAs in attendance, whether they were small or large, made it quite clear to the government, like, we want to be a partner on this, it's going to benefit everyone. But the CAs or our member municipalities shouldn't be bearing the brunt of that funding, just so that the action plan can be enacted. And so we are very hesitant to offer up ideas if there wasn't a recognition from the government that there would be in turn funding to support those ideas. And that always becomes basically your horse before your cart before your horse, and no one gets anywhere. And so we basically came to an agreement that anything that the CAs would offer up would be qualified by that comment, that we need the proper, we can offer up our ideas, but we're not committing to those ideas until you come to the table with funding and resources.
Thank you.
Linda?
So I'm agreeing with your comments, Marcel, and I would like to see that, make sure that our comments are quite balanced, and I think that's more important to me than anything. I understand the agriculture will be looked at, but by the same token, our worship mentioned that we have like the Lake Margaret problem. Well, that's a very urban environment. It's completely surrounded by a subdivision, and yet we had huge issues with what that was going on in that body of water. So the balance, to me, is just as important, right? It's not a finger-pointing exercise at one entity. It should be, what is everybody doing up there? And some of them are quite abusive in their use of this contaminant coming back into water. So, we have to be very balanced. So that's what I'm looking for in that, but I'm not sure, back through staff, how we're addressing that. Do we have key areas that we'd like to look at that would include both an urban setting and an agricultural type setting, rural setting? I mean, all of those would play into it, and we do have some very sensitive watershed areas. So we're making sure that strategically, that this would be balanced across the Kettle Creek area. So I guess those are the things I would like to see included to ensure that this report has a full explanation of what it is we're going after. I like the idea of the reduction because sitting on the water board, I sit in both the primary and the secondary, it is an issue. And the algae blooms and all the other things that are going on. We have a very shallow lake out there and we do need to look after it. So I do agree, we need to be participating, but it's sort of the balanced scorecard, right? Are we making sure that we're including the right things? And I don't know what the reaction from staff is on that, so.
Madam Chair, if I'm understanding Linda's comment is that you want it reiterated through our comments that the draft, again, this is the government's draft action plan. So we can certainly make our comment that they look at the enaction of that draft action plan in a balanced way so that they're equally concentrating on agricultural reduction as urban. In terms of what we are doing locally, again, the majority of our programs and services, whether it's agriculturally based in terms of our stewardship program, or outdoor or education and outreach to the broader public, I think those messages always balance out in terms of messaging that we can provide the farmers versus messaging like the projects Madam Chair mentioned for Lake Margaret, where we looked at a community-based social marketing campaign to encourage urban landowners to use phosphorus-free fertilizer. If you're going to use fertilizer at all, make sure it's phosphorus-free, and things of those natures. So, yeah, I would say that the authority looks at a balanced approach, and we can certainly make those comments back to the province as well.
And again, back to Ian's point, if I may, it troubles me a little bit about that funding source as well. So whatever they go forward with, we need cost recovery. We don't need, a little chunk of money. We need to make sure that they're giving us back enough money to implement. Not what they think we should get, that it's actually what it's going to cost us to do these things. So I don't know where the pot of money's coming from, Elizabeth, that they mentioned.
They haven't mentioned.
Yeah, so, so I think as our comments do go forward, I agree with you, we want to make sure that there is a cost recovery.
Marcel, would you?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I think we've had a good discussion about this. I don't think we need to labor it too much, but 2 points. The south half of Lake Erie brings probably just as much water to Lake Erie as the north half. And, are they participating in the study because of the bloom is larger than just an Ontario problem? And so that's a concern as well too. We just can't be the only ones that are concerned with this problem. The second, if I'm not mistaken, the Thames River is a study project this year that the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, I believe, is putting in upwards of $100,000 for this study. And ironically, Thames River Conservation Authority is only putting in-kind services towards this study.
I agree, the state, and there have been bilateral agreements, there has been work on both sides, but it needs to be maintained, that's right. It can't be us or just them doing it, we have to work together on this. So we share the lake, we have to share the responsibilities on it. So we do have a recommendation in our report from staff. I like the one, I'll move it. Moved by Linda, seconder on this recommendation. Steve, is there any further questions or comments? Okay, on the recommendation, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Great. Next item is our Dalewood Reservoir Trail connection. So this was sent out earlier today, and then got a copy of it for you as well.
Is Jill going to speak to this?
I don't have many items this month.
It's because we like to get out of the office and take some holidays. So. Okay, so we have a recommendation here. We're going to put that on the floor and then we can hear from, ask any questions on that. So we have a recommendation that KCCA staff work with City of St. Thomas to establish 3 additional access points to the Dalewood Trail. We can move in a seconder on that. Bill, the seconder? Yeah, okay. Anything further to add? We know we just got this today. It's been, I think it's pretty straightforward.
It is, I'd just like to hear from Joe what
Yeah,
the discussion was.
Anything to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to meet you. Yeah, Elizabeth and I met with the city engineer, Justin Lawrence, as well as another active community group working in the city to improve the access of walkability and fitness in the neighborhoods of the city. So they reached out to see if we'd be willing to look at additional access points through some of those urban areas around the Reservoir Trail. For the most part, there's several spider path trails on city lands that people have randomly been accessing these trails for numbers of years now, but they're not necessarily recognized as maintained access points, so we're not necessarily out doing hazard tree maintenance on those trail access points and things like that. We've primarily focused on the 2 main trailheads. As a result of this, we're looking at, we've kind of reached an agreement with the city staff as well as that community group of adding some recognized additional secondary access points where we'll be able to go out and start maintaining those, use proper signage and promote them a little more for more, I guess, recognized access around the trail system. As I mentioned, Lock Ave and Donker Drive, I think those are 2 access points that have been commonly used by the neighborhood. Deerfield Drive, Deerfield Court at the north end, that'll be a new access point through the new subdivision where there's an access corridor for maintenance through there that we can look at extending a portion of the trail and providing better access there.
Just a question, these spider trails, are they basically people's backyard trails into the?
No, for the most part, they're openings where there's little parklands or municipal storm sewer outlets where there are no building lots, so it's just an open cavity from the road where they can go in through the tributary. The one off Deerfield Court is actually a maintenance alley between 2 lots, 2 building lots.
Point of information, if I could, from Joe, why is there no access off of Dalewood Road farther closer to Ron McNeil line? I see the trail comes right up there, but there's no access point noted.
Yeah, that's one that historically there's been a little Dave's picnic area there that was closed, I believe, in the mid-'80s. And that's part, if you recall, some of the application funding that we did for part of the Dalewood North Trail, that we're looking at reopening that parking surface and making that a new trailhead. Primarily with some of the parking constraints that we have down at Dalewood Drive access because of the Waterworks Disc Golf Course. We do have some funding considerations out there looking at reestablishing that parking lot and making a secondary main trailhead point there. I think with this group, they were primarily looking for access points for that urban development where they don't necessarily have to drive to an access point, they can walk to it within the neighborhood. Obviously recognizing that one further up Dalewood Road would primarily be a vehicle driving to location to start their walk. So.
Further questions, comments?
Madam Chair, if I just
Yeah,
add, that's okay. Add one thing. I think one of the reasons bringing the report forward to the board's consideration, I think there's increasing interest in our trail systems from municipalities, whether it's trail connections or just from the communities wanting to go out and use that type of green infrastructure. This, I thought, was a way to work with the city to offer that to its residents. But I think there should be a little bit of recognition specifically for the City of St. Thomas members that as the increasing pressure on our lands continues to develop, we have to look at our budget in terms of how much time our staff are actually spending on the trails to keep them in a condition of use. And I just ask specifically our St. Thomas members to think of that moving forward. I think this was a give kind of on both ends, but I think in terms of, as I project the next 5 years, looking at budgets, I will be coming and asking for more staff, field staff for projects like this.
So there is a movement, if you will, around the St. Thomas area, around making us a designation. I think Central Algon is actually pushing it as well to be provincially recognized. So just so that we know that that's happening in partnership, but I understand you're talking about maintenance, ongoing maintenance and what it takes to do that. So we may have to have some discussions about what that looks like as a partnership, right? The health unit has some money, Central Algon's going after some money, the city is looking at different ways for us to do it. And they're very actively looking to grow these trails, right? So that's interesting. I just think that we're gonna have to be mindful that while we're asking for these things, if there is a maintenance to be
There
had.
has to be maintenance because of the risk
Right,
management.
Right, because there's also another group looking to connect West Algon right into town, so, and that's coming up as well, so that's another huge area. So, yeah, no, your point's well taken, and we just need to figure out what that partnership looks like and how we're going to do that.
Marcel?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thames Center has some experience with this. We have a wonderful trail we're very proud of. It's kind of one of the focuses for Dorchester, the Mill Pond Trail. And certainly Upper Thames was very involved in organizing and getting this trail to fruition with a lot of bridge work and a lot of construction for the trails. But it's the municipality through its recreation budget that look after the trail. And so moving forward, if this is going to have these entrances for this community to use, at some point there needs to probably be a relationship between St. Thomas and Kettle Creek to operate this trail.
In a more formal way. Yeah.
Great, we've got a recommendation on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none on the motion, I'll take both myself.
So with the discussion we've had, I wonder if it would be worth adding to the motion that staff proceed with discussions with the city to find some formal relationship for these trips.
Do you want that in the motion or just as direction? That was part of the motion?
I think it would be appropriate to be part of the motion. Or if it needs to be amended, that's okay as well, however we want to do that.
Friendly amendment? Or do you want to do an official amendment?
No, I think it's fine.
I think it is too. That's all right with our mover and seconder. Okay. All right, so we've added that to the motion. With that, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, next up are our section 28 permits that were in our advance package. Joe, anything to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 3 permits and 2 site clearances have been issued since the last meeting, primarily dealing with existing development. Noteworthy, permit number 4, that's a full reconstruction of an existing development on a slope in Port Stanley, so it'll be heavily guided, inspected, and directed through geotechnical engineering. Permit number 5 was unfortunately, again, dealing with the Jacqueline Court. We had some issues with rear yard grading, meeting the pre-approvals, but the house was already installed, so they had to go back to the municipality direction and do some additional improvements to maintain proper drainage there. At a point of interest, this is one of the last subdivisions in our watershed that development of the rear lot occurred right up to the top of the bank. We've been really pushing to move that setback back for erosion access around our slopes, and this was just another example that without that erosion access, there's very limited space for equipment and the ability to remove that fill out of the back of the yard. So it showed another example, more from the building perspective, of how important those buffers are from our ravines, not only for protection of the environment, but the ability to go back in and make corrections or remediation in the future. So it was just a point of interest there on that permit that we reissued.
Linda?
Just our relationship, so I had this discussion with council just the other night. We have a lot of homeowners, that aren't, who are adjusting things. who are putting fences up and doing things that sort of interfere with drainage. Our relationship with the planning department is a good one, Joe. And I think it's worthy of a discussion between you and them as to how maybe we bump that up a bit, because I know a couple of councillors, certainly in St. Thomas, who are receiving a number of calls about this particular issue. And they got brand new properties, which are not cheap at the moment, but we seem to be running into more and more of it because people aren't aware and aren't adhering to what's going on in their properties. And I know they're small properties, I get that, but by blocking it with a fence or something, they're impacting all their neighbors, right? So I don't know what we do about that with the planning department, but if there's a way to beef it up, I don't know what the discussion would look like, but.
Well, I know certainly over the last couple of weeks, myself and the bylaw officer of the city have paid a few landowners visits for grading works in their rear yards. And again, I just think it's really important that we maintain those buffers and setbacks so that there's less impacts to the features. Rear yard activity is one of the hardest things to manage because rear yards you can't observe or monitor.
But even in the planning process, is there a way for us to protect them a bit more when we're?
There's controls that are currently in the planning process, but once the developer has met final grade, signed off approvals, and the new landowners have moved in, it's then subject to enforcement, which rear yard activity is primarily complaint based because it's very difficult to monitor and observe rear yard activities. But it is something that we are cognizant of it. There are controls in the planning process. There's zoning that's embedded in to try and protect those things.
Just having people go, I mean, it's becoming a bigger issue all the time, right? Okay.
Okay, so we have a recommendation to acknowledge and concur the May 2017 Section 28 permits. Mover and seconder. Ralph? Max? Any further questions, comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, with that, can I get a motion? Is that all the, we didn't have any further additional items? Okay, can I get a motion to go to camera? Linda, Steve, all in favor? And that's carried.